I want to share a message of encouragement today. Every community across our nation shares a deep concern for the violence and chaos making its way into all of our cities. We're watching as leftist mayors and governors refuse to stand up for their citizens and address the anarchy happening on their watch, refuse to protect the safety of the majority of their communities who do not condone turmoil and unrest, who are foregone by government leaders who refuse to condemn rioting, looting, arson, and murder. Millions of Americans of all ethnicities and cultures are being abandoned by their elected officials as their rights are being jeopardized, lives being threatened, businesses being burned, and loved ones are being lost. And they're forced to stand up for themselves as their leaders pursue political statements over protecting the innocent. And now we're left to sit back and watch as extremist groups of angry mobs deface our historical monuments, topple over statues that represent our nation's history, and try to erase what has led to the unprecedented opportunity that America offers. Christopher Columbus, one of the most widely criticized historical figures of today, a man who achieved the monumental task of joining the two hemispheres, in turn doubling the size of the habitable planet and establishing trade between the two continents. Yes, there was violence committed by the Europeans landing in the Western Hemisphere, as there was violence happening between tribes among the indigenous people. But some Europeans did not want to bring violence, but rather shared God and Christianity with the indigenous people. Yes, if we look through the lens of what life looks like today, it's easy to judge based on today's standard of law, respect of life, and dignity. And not to condone the brutality and dehumanization that happened at that time, but the way of life for people across the world was vastly different for all cultures and religions 300, 400, and 500 years ago than they are now. And to rip down physical representations of these events, even if they remind us of the suffering in our nation's past, also ignores the more important message, and that is that we did not allow this to determine what the future of our country would look like, or inhibit the vision of what our country would be for all people. Another example, Abraham Lincoln. Today, memorials dedicated to this president, monuments and statues are all under direct attack. In our history, Alexander Stephens of Georgia, the Confederacy's vice president, clearly stated that they believed our government was founded on slavery and that black men and women were not equal to white men and women. Yet Abraham Lincoln understood that in order to unify the Unions, it would mean either slavery everywhere, which is not what he wanted to see, or slavery nowhere, the latter becoming the leading cause behind the Civil War. And as the war progressed, the moral component behind ending slavery took over as his driving motivation, and finally in his Emancipation Proclamation, when all was said and done, he was proudly able to declare, "All persons held as slaves shall be forever free." Between then and up until the civil rights movement of the 60s, there were many more obstacles to overcome to say that America had finally established equal rights to everyone living here. Everything from slavery to segregation to women's rights and the belief in eugenics by Margaret Sanger are not things that millions of Americans who have lived and died since the Civil Rights Act of 1964 proudly denote as aspects of our complicated history. We acknowledge the good with the bad. We've had true victories, like women being granted the right to vote in 1920, and we've seen bouts of true evil, like the KKK formed in 1865. But without evil, there would be no demonstration of our virtue. Without obstacles, there would be no opportunity to become stronger. There are a lot of sides to our history, but to tear down these statues and monuments and to belittle the massive extremes of hostility that we've overcome is to demean the more important points. And that is our proclivity toward that which is good. In attempting to abolish our times of pain, we negate the true foundation of what America stands for, our undeniable desire to transcend our wrongdoings, to do better, to be kinder, to be more compassionate. Good or bad, everything that has happened has led us to this time where anyone from any country or any religious belief, any skin color and culture, any background, can come here and have equal freedom, equal independence, and equal opportunity, where you can get an education, start a business, invent the next hot technology, or live on a farm, where you can have no children or 12 children, where there is no superior race or religion. You can be a Christian or a Buddhist or an atheist. You can live your life, and opportunity knows no skin color. While we have a lot of perplexing aspects in our past, if we removed or changed even one piece of it, this might mean the difference between regression or progression. Maybe we wouldn't have been able to come as far as we have, or perhaps we'd still be in the same place we were 60 years ago. All of us in our own past have things that we aren't proud of. We have challenges we've had to overcome and times in our lives where we've been far less than the best versions of ourselves. But if you look at your own life, would you remove any of those things? Would you eliminate any experience, even if it's bad, if it meant you wouldn't have what you have now, or be where you are now, or be as strong as you are now? Yes, those things hurt and they were painful, but not having gone through them might have slowed your progression or kept you from learning lessons you might not have been able to learn otherwise. You can try to forget them and try to erase those moments, but that doesn't change the fact that they played a role in your life, and it doesn't change the fact that they happened. And just because you don't have a physical reminder, it doesn't eliminate their existence. So the same goes for our country's history. You can burn flags, you can deface monuments, topple our statues, and destroy our communities, but that does not change our history. It doesn't invalidate the role many people have had. It doesn't mean that these things didn't happen. It doesn't change the fact that these figures existed, and it certainly doesn't mean that we're going to forget where we came from. All you're doing is destroying public property and bringing down communities of people who are already suffering. And when all is said and done, statues can be replaced. But the damage, destruction, violence, and chaos that you've left in the wake of your anger is what people will have to recover from for decades. Keep in mind, when you're burning things to the ground, you're doing nothing that changes or erases our history. All you're doing is putting more obstacles in the way for people who would love to see your passion for change behind causes that uplift struggling communities, instead of creating a situation where now taxpayer money has to be allocated toward cleaning up your mess and community efforts that could have been otherwise directed toward fixing a school or helping a struggling single mother. They now go to removing graffiti, sweeping up ashes, repairing broken windows, and cleaning up burned down buildings. That vandalized monument of Abraham Lincoln or the demolished statue of Christopher Columbus, those are just things. They're expensive things, but taking them down isn't going to make neighborhoods rot with gang violence safer. They're not going to get anyone a higher paying job or generate more two-parent homes or elevate the number of students who apply for and graduate from college. And your destructive efforts are not going to make the majority of Americans who actually respect our history forget about it, to stop sharing it, or to stop teaching it. We will continue producing flags, we will sing our anthem, and we will construct our monuments. As we've overcome mayhem and uproars in the past, as we've demonstrated time and time again, Americans from all backgrounds who believe in the truth of who we are and what we stand for will always overcome.